what did I call this thing before? Shred it edit. That's what, okay, shred it edit. What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Shred It Edit. I say welcome back. I only did like 2 of these. I did them like 2 or 3 years ago. But I am here because I want to ramble on for 10 minutes and cut it down to 3 minutes and spend 3 hours editing to talk to you about the current state of off-road racing in the United States. Now, I feel like the general moto public has a broad understanding of what off-road racing in the US kind of consists of. We've got the GNCCs, which is your biggest series, and they've been booming right now. We'll get to that in a little bit. But you got your GNCCs, you got your works, you've got your Endurocross, you've got your national enduros, you've got your Kinda full gas sprint enduros more recently, Big Six, Hare and Hound. I mean, you got all kinds of cool series out there that are all kind of finding their niche as we go on. But the main reason I'm here is because the Endurocross series has not announced their 2017 schedule. We're sitting here January 23rd of 2017, and the Endurocross schedule has been, the Endurocross series has been completely radio silent. I mean, their website hasn't been updated since the last round of 2016. Their series last year, I should say, didn't start until August, late August at that. So you might be thinking, okay, well, it's January. If they start in August, that's really not that big of a deal. However, last year they announced their series schedule in early December for the following year. So like early December 2015, they announced their schedule for 2016. We're now sitting at the end of January, and there has not been a single peep out of the Endurocross crowd. So I'm pretty worried. I think there's something up. A lot of you probably don't know that Endurocross was originally started by Eric Perinard. I don't know how you say it. Anyway, he is the mastermind behind so many one-off events, but he's just promoter extraordinaire, Eric Perinard. From what I understand, now I might not have this completely correct. I couldn't find a lot of documentation online. Endurocross was sold to 10 promotions. I don't know what their name is. It was sold to them in 2014, I believe. It was 2 or 3 years ago. And from Eric Perinard is still involved in the series. A theme I've noticed of the Endurocross series, just in the 2 years that I've been doing it, the tracks have been ridiculous as far as difficulty goes. I mean, even in just these 2 years, the tracks have progressed. They've started making the matrix sections more difficult, harder for the top guys to get through. And when you see, I fell into this trap, and so I don't blame people that do this. When I used to watch the Endurocross races on TV, I'm like, yeah, I mean, it looks hard, sure, but it doesn't look impossible. It looks like, I could get out there and do that. It's not that bad. Trust me, when you are down there on that track, even just walking it puts that shit into perspective real fast. Some of that stuff that they are doing, when I say they, I mean Webb and Haker, because those two guys are on a completely different level than anyone that's alive. Like, just those two guys are not human. Don't worry about them. Just fight for 3rd place. That's the best you're gonna do. They lapped 3rd place multiple times in 2016. They have made the tracks so extremely difficult that you even see Haker stumbling through the matrix multiple laps during a main event. And I feel like the tracks have progressively gotten more technical over the years. Now, Endurocross started as a limited schedule back in 2004? I want to say 2004. I really should do my research before I start talking on camera, but I don't have time. They started off doing, I think they only had 1 event in Vegas at the Orleans Arena originally. Then they started doing 3 events. They spread out a little. This was when David Knight was destroying the competition. Then Taddy Lazuziak came in after he won Erzberg out of nowhere. The series got a lot of mainstream attention. I say mainstream, I mean motocross mainstream, which isn't really mainstream. When you had guys like Ryan Hughes and Destry Abbott coming in, and you had just like John Dowd. You had guys with moto street cred coming in and racing the Endurocross series, which gave it a lot of attention. Like if you see Ryan Hughes, you're like, oh, Ryan Hughes, he's a badass. He pushed his bike up the hill with a broken chain to try to win the title. Endurocross is inherently interesting to watch, and maybe I'm just seeing that through rose-colored glasses because I've loved the sport since its introduction, and I've been racing it for the past 2 years. But I feel like Endurocross is just as entertaining as Supercross in the fact that, like, Endurocross is so unpredictable. This is kind of getting into what I think is wrong with the series now. Endurocross used to be so unpredictable, and you had these guys like Ryan Hughes, John Dowd, Mike Brown still, but he's retiring. But you had these guys that gave the sport some motocross mainstream attention, and now the tracks and the sport itself has become completely isolated. It's specialized. These guys dedicate their entire year to racing Endurocross, and you get guys like Haker and Webb that just, this is all they think about is extreme enduros and Endurocross. That's all they do. They're trials guys, but you know, they came to Endurocross because it had a bigger spotlight on it because of those moto guys racing it, and then they made it their they spent their lives, they dedicated their lives to getting as good at that sport as they possibly could, and it shows. They are the cream of the crop in Endurocross. And this is why I think Endurocross is doomed unless they really change things up. The tracks have gotten so technical, and the sport has become so specialized that you can't get that mainstream attention anymore. I mean, the only stuff that really gets attention is like the title wins and the fights, you know, the takeouts. And if people jump something ridiculous, you know, like Haker usually goes for stuff big. Mike Brown does some crazy stuff. Let's look at some other sports, because I feel like I'm not explaining myself very well. Supermoto had the same thing. You had these guys from Moto that were well known racing it, and that gave it the mainstream moto attention. And then as the sport progressed, it became more specialized, and then as it became more specialized, you lost outside interest because those guys are only known for doing that. They're only known for doing supermoto, as in like Haker and Webb are only known for doing Endurocross now. So what would I do to fix it? I would change the tracks. I think the tracks are too technical. Just speaking for myself, and again, I'm not at the top level. I'm not even close. But when I first started riding Endurocross, I thought it was going to be one thing, and it turned out it was another thing. It was entirely different than I thought. We built an Endurocross track on some land, and when I first made it, I was like, yeah, this is super fun. Like it was challenging at first, you know, but I could get into a flow and I could start, you know, racing through the track and having a lot of fun. And then I went to my first Endurocross in Daytona, which turned out to be kind of a fluke race as far as the dirt. It was just coffee ground sand. It was the weirdest dirt I've ever raced on. But anyway, that first race, I was like, wow, that's what this is like. If you have not raced an Endurocross race, you don't talk about how easy it looks, because it is so difficult, guys. Everything is bigger than you think it's going to be. Like, I mean, and there's no run up to anything. I mean, the obstacles will have dirt cut out from, you know, there's no dirt build up to the logs. There's no running, running area to get speed to jump a double. Like, and there's no time to breathe. I've been racing for a decade now, and I have never had my lungs hurt from breathing so hard until I raced an Endurocross race. My lungs were sore for days after the first several Endurocross races that I did, because you are just dead. Like I had some times where I dropped my bike and it was like I couldn't make my body lift my 252 stroke that's super lightweight off the ground, because I was just, my body was starving for air. Those races are ridiculous. And I think it takes away from the racing when there's only two guys that can really race. There's the rest of the field are just trying to get through without making mistakes, which is fine in a trials event. I mean, it's basically become a mixture of trials and racing, in my opinion. Like, these guys are just trying to get through without making mistakes, let alone focus on really racing each other, you know? which is what makes racing fun to watch. You know, I mean, it's fun to watch guys just with complete mastery of a section go through it, especially me when I've been to these races and I take 10 minutes to get through one section the first lap and I just can't figure it out. And then I watch Cody Webb the first lap of practice just and just go right through it. That's really interesting for me, or for anyone that knows a lot about riding or has ridden an Endurocross track before. That's really interesting to watch. But if you're the average fan surfing channels and you just see an Endurocross race from the past 2 years, you're gonna keep surfing because it's like, what the hell? This is stupid. These guys are riding over rocks. Everyone's spread out. There's no racing. They're just riding around. Other than maybe Webb and Haker are getting into it, but you don't see a crowd of people racing. Not anymore, at least. And realize, I'm not saying this is the case at every single race. There are great battles in Endurocross racing. I have not seen a really good crowd. I mean, Phoenix was good, but I feel like that was just because the stadium had very limited seating, so it kind of looked bigger than it was, and it was taking place at the same time at the same convention center as a UTV, ATV, parts expo. You know, my mom overheard some people that had come in from the convention center into the Endurocross race during practice because it was free, you didn't have to have a ticket, and they were just watching practice, and they were talking about like, man, why aren't these guys just jumping through this stuff? It looks so easy. Look, that I would just jump right over that thing. These are like quad guys, or maybe even just UTV guys, who knows? But that kind of sums up what I'm trying to say, is that the average guy, no matter how tough you make the track, the average guy is going to be like, that's not that hard. Because they see Haker and Webb go through it like it's not even there, and they're like, oh yeah, look, those two dudes can do it. I mean, they don't consider that those two guys are as elite of athletes as Tiger Woods in his prime, or Tom Brady, or whoever. Those two guys are as good at this sport as those guys are at that sport, at their respective sports. So I feel like that's the problem. You need to make this sport a little bit easier so that everyone can race each other, because no matter how hard the track is, people aren't going to respect the difficulty unless they've done it themselves. And I feel like that's true of any sport, football, baseball, basketball, motocross, supercross. But that's what people are gonna do regardless. Now, in contrast with what I'm saying about Endurocross, you could make the same case for GNCC. It's become a pretty specialized sport. I mean, you have Ryan Sipes racing it and stuff like that, but mainly the guys, I mean, Caleb Russell is like the GNCC god, and then you have like Works. I mean, you have the Hare and Hound stuff. You got Ricky Brabeck and guys that are like dedicated to those individual disciplines, and they're kind of dominating those. And this kind of brings me to why I'm worried about the off-road scene in the US in general. Every discipline kind of has their guy or guys, and they're all kind of retreating into that niche. And it's easy to do when you get comfortable at something and you're good at that. You naturally want to do that thing. That's what I've done the past 2 years with Endurocross. I've kind of dedicated my training to being good at Endurocross, and I want to race more Endurocross and extreme enduros at the same time. Anyway, guys, this has been a hell of a ramble. I'm sorry, and if you stayed this long, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you guys think. I mean, I feel like the Endurocross and off-road scene in general is kind of losing its luster, but if you guys have contrasting opinions, maybe I'm too deep, maybe I'm too into this stuff. I can't see it with clear eyes, but tell me what your favorite series is, what series you think has the most potential for mass appeal, and I will talk to you next time. Peace.